This got a lot of attention, which often things don't related to the Supreme Court. It's kind of a, I'm a lawyer by background. I'm a little bit wonky. I love to read decisions. I love to analyze legal issues. But for most people, it's not that interesting. However, there was quite a scene in front of the Supreme Court. And this was yesterday because there were comments being made at a protest outside the Supreme Court. A protest because there was an issue being discussed, a case being discussed inside the Supreme Court that concerned the American left. The issue had to do with abortion. I'm going to play the clip. This is the senior leader of the Democrat Party, the minority leader of the U.S. Senate, Chuck Schumer, live outside the Supreme Court. I'm going to play what he said, and then we'll talk about it.
And they're taking away fundamental rights. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
Okay, I think this is more important maybe than some people do. I understand that Chuck Schumer has, free speech rights. He's allowed to talk. He's allowed to comment on the Supreme Court. He's allowed to weigh in. He's allowed to hold a rally. But what he said in that clip we just played crossed the line from even vigorous or rigorous commentary into threatening those two justices whom he mentioned by name, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. These two justices appointed by President Trump, known to be pro-life, are going to be ruling on a case involving abortion, involving the right to abortion. And in specifics, the challenge, of course, is not just the particular case in front of these judges, but the larger question the left has been complaining and worried about, which is whether the Supreme Court will overturn at some point, will overturn Roe versus Wade, the decades-old decision that found a right to an abortion written into the Constitution in some truly manipulated, contorted way, took non-existent language in the Constitution and magically discovered a right to an abortion. I think Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided. It was wrongly decided, and because they found a right that isn't there. It was an extension of the right to privacy, a previous decision that found a constitutional right to privacy. I think that's a closer question if that's a legitimate interpretation of the Constitution. But Roe versus Wade just basically said, based on that right to privacy, there's no right to an abortion. So Supreme Court has a case in front of it. It involves a state law in which they are requiring abortion clinics to have doctors on hand who have privileges, meaning the right to practice medicine at a local hospital. So when things go wrong in abortion clinics, these doctors can make their way to a hospital where they have privileges to take care of the life of the mother whose life may be in danger based on an abortion having, for some reason, gone bad. The point is, in our country, many states have been trying to pass laws growing restrictions on abortion. Many people on the left, and perhaps rightly, think that these decisions are continuing to chip away at what they thought and they want to argue is an absolute right under Roe versus Wade, absolute right to abortion, no restrictions whatsoever, and states continue to chip away at that. So there's a case like that in front of the Supreme Court right now. But I want to make 2 points about what Schumer had to say and tell you also something about what Tlaib had to say and contrast it with comments made by President Trump. But number one about Schumer is he's actually threatening these justices. Now, he would say, and he did say later, I wasn't really threatening them. I didn't mean something bad would happen to them. I'm really threatening the Republican majority in the Senate who put these guys on the court. That's who I'm threatening. And so he's trying to back off. It's not what he said, but he's trying to back off. So he's got to, he realizes he went too far, and he gets caught up in the milieu of this protest outside the Supreme Court, where he's got these strident pro-abortion protesters, and they cannot agree to any restriction of any kind, even having a restriction that involves the protection of the safety and health of the mother. Even those are not okay with them. So he got caught up in the moment, and the crowd's cheering him on, and he's their big hero, which leads me to the second point. It is the bizarrest place where the Democrat Party has found itself at this time, where they are standing on abortion as a right equivalent to the real rights that we actually do fight for in this country: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, the freedoms that are God-given freedoms recognized in the Declaration and emboldened and fleshed out in the Constitution. Those kind of rights are what our side stands for. The left has made abortion into a sacrament, it is that can never be touched, can never be altered. They're more willing, the left is more willing to attack and put limits on the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly, than they are on any restriction of any kind on abortion. And I think as recent studies have shown, more and more people are aware of the ugliness or the brutality, the grotesque nature of the abortion process, especially in late-term abortion, where people are beginning to understand what's really going on and what the left is really protecting. But the left at this point, they have locked themselves into that, they've backed themselves into that corner. They have decided no matter what, that's what they stand for. And so Schumer, getting carried away with the excitement of the moment, actually spoke in a threatening way. And so I think it is good that there was a response. The Supreme Court, Chief Justice Roberts, did in a written form simply say essentially that there were comments made today relating to two particular justices that were threatening, and basically the justices are going to go through and reach their decisions based on the law and basically will not be threatened. So he, in a very mild rebuke, Justice Roberts did say to Schumer, we don't go there. So you don't know, if you didn't hear what Tlaib said, Rashida Tlaib, she's a member of U.S. Congress. She's not Senate, she's Congress, but she is she's one of the AOC's squad. She is a first-term representative from the state of Michigan. And she gave a speech, also, same platform, same place where Schumer was. She gave a speech in which she said, outside the Supreme Court, that, and she said, as I have said in the past, when I was a member, because she was a member of the Michigan legislature, she said, if those people out there who want to tell me to do it with my body and tell me what I can do with my body, she's talking about people who believe in any sort of restrictions or limitations on abortion. She said, you know what, and I'm sorry, this is a little X-rated here, but she went on to say, on live camera, you can find it if you want to, I'm not going to play it, but you can find it on YouTube. She said, if you people want to support anyone who wants to support restrictions on my body, so don't have sex with me. Okay, first of all, I think most people in the country are thinking, no one's too interested in that invitation anyway. But I'm getting at the point, I'm telling you what she had to say to make the point that this has become such an extreme, we are committed, this is what we get to do, we get to have abortion, and they are worked up into a frenzy over the idea that a state might want to have women going to abortion clinics having access to quality care should something go wrong, which it sometimes does, which does lead to the death of women through the abortion process or after the abortion is finished. So the idea of life-saving legislation to protect women, to enable them to get help in time in case they have a botched abortion, this is even not okay. They're so concerned. There's this sacrosanct right to an abortion trumps for them laws that would even protect the health of the women. So you had, Schumer threatening Supreme Court justices, Tlaib making crass remarks about her defense of the abortion right. And then you heard people on the left say, well, so what if that's what Schumer said? Because look what Trump says all the time. Trump just weighed in last week on Sotomayor, 2 weeks ago, on Sotomayor. And so he criticized the judiciary too. And I actually think it does matter to make the distinction and to know how to respond to that argument. President Trump did criticize a dissent in a written published opinion, a dissent by Sotomayor, which impugned the integrity of the majority of the justices. Sotomayor basically said, I don't have the language in front of me, but her basic point was that the majority of the court, impugning their integrity, saying the majority of the court, they just go along whatever Trump wants. They are not following the law. They are not applying the law accurately. She accused them of being political hacks in plain English. And so President Trump criticized her, Ann Ginsburg, and just said basically, this is out of line. This does not comport with your duty as a member of the judiciary. This is not how we talk. He did not threaten her. Distinction number one, he did not threaten her. He didn't threaten anyone. And other comments President Trump has made in the course of his candidacy and in the course of his presidency do refer specifically to federal court decisions, district and appellate court decisions, but his comments relate to the decisions issued by judges that, in his view and the view of many serious scholars, are incorrect decisions that seem more driven by the political agenda of the left to get to the result they want, which is to stop President Trump from protecting the borders, stop President Trump from revising our refugee status in order to make sure we don't bring people here who mean us harm, and an attack, generally speaking, on stopping President Trump in his tracks. He viewed many decisions, as many scholars do, legal scholars do, as simply having no basis in law. It's a very different thing to say for the president and anyone else to say that a decision does not comport with the law, that a decision by a judge is inconsistent with the law he or she is supposed to be following. And so you're criticizing the decision than to threaten the judges by name, as Schumer did. And I am not saying, because I do think the old expression was fair for the goose is fair for the gander, or rule of law, same rule apply to all. Just because you put on a judicial robe, just because you've taken an oath and you fulfill your job as a judge, does not mean you have put on a cloak protecting you from all criticism. The American public and elected officials are entitled to criticize decisions made by courts. You can criticize decisions, and you better do it, especially when you are in the position President Trump is in, which is he ends up having most of his agenda stalled, or a great deal of his agenda stalled by a federal appellate courts who simply mock and ridicule his efforts to bring our refugee system, our immigration system, our visa process system into line with his agenda to keep America safer. You can criticize a decision, very different when you threaten a judge. And that rule applies to both sides. And just because judges are judges, even the vaunted Supreme Court justices or all the judges in this country, you are not entitled to immunity from criticism. You shouldn't be threatened, but you're not entitled to immunity from being threatened. That, my friends, is the difference between the way Trump has spoken about the judges and the way that senior Senator Schumer, a guy. One last point about this before I get to my one last topic. Schumer has been in the Senate, it's like for 150 years. Okay, maybe not that. Whatever it is, 33, 36 years, been there forever, well knows the cameras are rolling, the microphones are rolling. He knows what he is saying. He knows he is getting national attention. He is working on behalf of the Democrat Party in that speech, trying to convey to the American public, the subsection of women in the American public who ardently support abortion with no restrictions whatsoever, regardless of the health and safety of the mother. He's talking to them. It's political. He knows what he's doing. He's been in front of the camera enough to know what you can say that is critical and what you can say that is threatening. He made a calculated decision. I'm going to get this out there because I want those judges to be worried. I want those judges to be frightened. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't really think personally he would engage in violence against any of them. I'm not accusing him of that. But there are a lot of nutty people on the American left, frankly on the right too. A lot of nutty people out there in the world. And for a senior senator, the minority leader of the Senate, to threaten Supreme Court justices with violence is not okay. Was not a cavalier offhand remark at some cocktail party. It was a decision he made to speak that way. And Supreme Court Justice Roberts was exactly right in calling him out on it.